It goes back from what do you want the podcast to do? What do you want the book to do? What do you want the social video to do? And then once that, then the tech behind it and the steps behind it, those become obvious.
Hey everyone, it's Melanie Johnson back again, one of the CEOs and co-founders of Elite Online Publishing. We are talking books, all books here in publishing. And I have one of our mentors that taught us a little bit about publishing and a ton about podcasting. He's the one who inspired us to start our podcast when we started our publishing company. I don't even know, Paul Colligan, how many books you have. I don't even know. I can't wait. Maybe you don't even know how many books you have, but he has published a lot of books, ladies and gentlemen. Paul, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you. Technically, the number is 14.
All right, it looked like more than that, but I'll believe you. I was going to say over 20 for sure, but yeah, you've got a lot of books. And so tell us, what inspired you? I know you're a techie, and give us your backstory a little bit about why you wrote your first book and how that started the journey down to 14 books.
Here's the funny thing. And I haven't chatted about this much. My first book was a technical ghostwriting job for the Pearson Education Special Edition using books. They're about 1,200 pages long. They had determined it was the follow-up to Special Edition using Microsoft Front Page 98. It was the follow-up of Special Edition using Microsoft Front Page 2000. The project nearly killed me. It was a lot of books. It was a lot of pages. It was a lot of words. It was a lot of screenshots. It was a lot of everything and it was ghostwriting, so I didn't even get my name on it. Not that really my friends would pick up technical manuals on how to do web design.
Yeah.
And funny enough, through a funny series of very fortunate events, I made 6 figures on the book.
Wow.
And as a ghostwriter, and it was a thing that couldn't be repeated again, but I definitely take it. That's a whole nother episode. And it came time for especially using Microsoft Office Front Page 2002. And I wasn't interested and I knew that this thing wasn't going to happen again. Yeah. And they go, we'll let you put your name on it. And it was really an edit of the old version. So I knocked that one out pretty quickly. So my name was on it. And then it was time for Special Edition using Microsoft Front Page 2003. Yeah. And I told them no. And they said, come up with something that isn't paycheck. And so we worked in a deal where I would put a bunch of affiliate offers inside of the book. And I'm the only book in the history of the Special Edition using books that actually had the logo for my website on the front cover. So people all over the country would go to the bookstore and pull the book off the shelf, see the logo, visit my website. And so I was a profitable author, but I didn't own it. I didn't own any of the stuff I was doing. And that I didn't necessarily like. So my next book was the Business Podcasting Bible that I did with Alex Mendozian. And that was a hybrid model. That was an interesting model. We were all still figuring things out. That little taste, that little bit of, oh, I like that. I like that a lot. So the next book I did was funny. I did an event, really low speaking fee because they promised me amazing HD video to use it as a training product. And I got, instead of amazing HD video, I got terrible low res video, so much that I wouldn't even want to give it to my audience. And so I got it transcribed and made a book out of it. And I rapidly ran it through the Kindle process, and I rapidly ran it through the Amazon process. And my first totally owned by me book came out, and I just got addicted. I knew this is it, man. This is where I'm going. And when I did that big book for Pearson, they would tell me what I had to write. When I wrote my own book, I wrote what I want to write. And I had to negotiate with lawyers to get those affiliate offers. Now the books were all my offers. And then from them, I just started creating book after book as it made sense.
And it's so smart. I tell our authors all the time to put offers in the book. Make sure, like I looked at your latest book, and of course you have a QR code in the beginning where people can opt in. And so many publishing houses and authors don't know to do that, or they put an offer just in the last page. I'm like, listen, if you have it in the beginning when they preview your book, they don't even have to buy your book, and you might get their name and email. And could become a client without even buying your book.
Which is funny enough, what happened to me with that Special Edition using Microsoft Office Front Page 2003 book. There were people who hey, I saw the book, I saw your website, I went to your website because it was on the front cover. It was really cool. And they're hope you don't mind that in about the book I was making 3 cents from. So like that. And you sell enough 3 cents, it's nice. But the real money was if they bought one of my templates or one of my training programs and that kind of stuff, I made a lot more money. So yeah. I don't know, make the offers. It's yours. It's your deal. And the thing is, if people like the book and you deliver on the promise, the book can't be a
Mhm.
sales letter because nobody
Right.
wants to pay for a sales letter. People get upset. But if you deliver the level promised on the book, and a lot of people, our favorite book, we finish our favorite books wanting more.
Yeah.
And if there's an offer at the end of how to get more, yay. Like, you just serve it that way.
Obviously, the book that you did, you said you got 6 figures from your other books. What would you say? We used to say when we come to your conference, because of my book, right? So, because of your books, how has that affected your career?
So, I had a book called, ready for this? Ready for this?
Yeah.
Complicated name. Write this one down. It was called How to Podcast. And it was called How to Podcast because a lot of people were asking me how to podcast, and there was no money in me
Hmm.
teaching people how to podcast. There was money in me teaching people how to make money from their podcasting. And so I had to
Yeah.
make it easy because the problem is they didn't know how to podcast. So I wrote a book called How to Podcast. And I was at an event, and it was the Joe Polish annual event.
Uh-huh.
And they had the gifting suite, and I had a copy of my book for everybody in the gifting suite. And this guy takes the book and he shows me the book. He goes, "You did this for Joe?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "You can do it for me?" And I go, "Yeah." He puts the book back down, gives me his card, and he says, "Call me when this is over with." And he's been a client for 8 years.
Wow.
And so the book could have been blank. It wasn't. It was good stuff. But the book absolutely could have been blank.
Yeah.
You
And
know?
it was that he knew you did it for somebody else that he respected too, and
Yeah.
that you're the expert because you wrote the book.
Yeah. Before, I used to work for a highfalutin consulting company.
Yeah.
Did I mention that it was highfalutin? And the guy had these gold plated, gold paper business cards that were cut a little bit different. Like, the value of the card was this was like in 2000. The value of the
Yeah.
card was like $1.87 per card. And the guy was like, "Please use them when you can, but don't put them in the Subway fishbowl for a free sandwich," kind of thing.
Yeah.
And my books, when I print them, are cheaper than those business cards were. And they're a heck of a lot more impressive. So I'm on the airplane flying from Portland to San Diego for Social Media Marketing World. Done. And I fly enough Alaska, I get upgraded on a regular basis. And so I got upgraded to first, and I'm sitting next to the social media marketing manager for Intel. We knew each other from past things. And I looked up her book at Amazon on the in-flight Wi-Fi. And funny enough, at that particular moment, now this gal had somebody paid her like $20,000 for the Korean rights to her book. So she's doing fine. But at
Yeah.
that particular moment, my book was number 3 at Amazon and her book was number 4. So I show her the laptop. I go, "Hey, number 3, number 4." And so we're chatting about books. And I'm curious about the self-publishing versus the publisher stuff and whatnot. And I ask her, I'm like,
Yeah.
"How many copies of your book do you have to give away to people?" Just generally author to author question. She says, "I have 3." And I'm like, "What do you mean you have 3?" She goes, "That was all they'd give me." She says, "How many do you have?" I sent 250 to the hotel. And she says, "What if you can't give those all away? I'll leave them at the hotel because they're worth so much." And my first book, this was my favorite. Oh my goodness. When I did the special edition using Microsoft Front Page 2000 book, when it was over with, my editor says, "As a publisher from Pearson Education, we can get you, if you buy a case, your book's at 30% off." And
Yeah.
I go, "Great. Amazon is selling my book one off at 40% off." And my publisher, Pearson Education, one of the top ones, says, and I quote, "Yeah, we can't compete with Amazon."
And the
Think
book's
about the
coming from
implications.
them, right? Because they're not doing print on demand. The traditional
Think
publishers
about
don't
the
do it.
implication. Yeah, insane, insane.
Ah,
And so, yeah, so always having a book, you get on podcasts, you bring a copy to people, they sign it. Yeah, it's just fun. It's just really fun.
talk to that about the traditional versus self-publishing. We've had authors, we work with traditional publishing houses to launch a book because they don't know how to make it a bestseller or get it book awards or do the right categories and all that stuff. So we've worked with them. Some authors are only getting $5,000 from a traditional publishing house, and some are getting $250,000. but they have no control. Like we're seeing some of the contracts, they only can repurpose 10% of their content and things like that. They can't make a workbook out of it. They can't do anything else. But I guess maybe there's a number or a threshold that you're like, yeah, it's worth, if someone's going to pay me $250,000, I'll go with a traditional publisher. But I'm even thinking like some of these celebrities and stuff, maybe it is more worth it if they own all their IP and they still self-publish.
So my latest book, Never Go Shopping When You're Hungry,
Yep.
is a fun look at the 4 questions that I was calling it the 4 questions, but nobody wants to buy a book called the 4 questions. And Never Go Shopping When You're Hungry goes, the analogy is when you go shopping when you're hungry, you fill your cart up full of crap. That's the good, you throw it in, you spend a whole lot of money and you don't even get what you needed or don't even get what you wanted. The 4 questions we ask as an organization is, what do you want it to do? How will you know that it's doing it?
Mm-hmm.
Is it doing it? How do we do it better? Now, my first self-published book that I had, my first self-published podcast book, I got an editor who had a master's degree from the journalism school at the University of Edinburgh, was my editor.
Mm-hmm.
Probably better than the editor I got when I worked from Pearson Education. And the editor said, I asked the editor, what do you want? He goes, I want to go to Fiji for a surfing vacation. And all right, how much does it cost to go to Fiji? How much does it cost to have internet access? He surfed during the day. He edited my book at night. And I got the editing job for a steal. But what he wanted was a beach vacation to Fiji. And so the thing is, if you're a celebrity and you want to make $250,000 to go to Paris for 3 weeks and write a book, great. Go to Paris for 3 weeks, write a book, collect your money and go. But if you want something that you can leverage for whatever the heck you want, that you can bring a box load of to an event and hand out like business cards, that you can begin to build courses and training programs the event over and that kind of stuff, what do you want the book to do? And then number 2, how will you know that the book is doing it? And I'll tell you one way one of the only ways you can know the book is doing it is if you have access to the sales numbers. And so if it's somebody else's running, you don't have access to those things.
Yeah.
What do you want the book to do? It is ridiculous in the world I am in not to be able to hand whoever I want a copy of my book. And if it's going to cost me $25 to hand whoever I want a copy of my book, that I wrote, that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and to me, it doesn't make sense not to have control. Like when we were asking the traditional publishers, hey, can you lower the price? Can you do this? And they're like, no. We're like, can you change the categories on Amazon? No. We're like, what do you mean no? Of course you can change the category. Oh, no, Amazon won't let us. What do you mean they won't let you? We do it all the time.
Yeah. And so I grew up in Germany, so it's a
I didn't
special
know
place
that.
for me. And if a book publisher came to me and said, we'll give you $50,000 and a little cabin on the Rhine River for you and your family to spend 4 weeks, write what you can, we'll get the rest done. Like, I'd do that. Because what I want the book to do, pay for my German vacation.
You don't care about the back end so much,
exactly.
right?
I got a vacation out of it. And the cool thing was, though, at the end, though, I'm not
And you
promoting
still have
it,
a
I'm not
book.
going on tours, I'm not doing,
Yeah.
what do you want the book to do? And for most people, the answer should be, I want the book to open doors.
Yeah.
That's the real power of it. And
Now,
and I know these people, I have friends who go, I don't want to get rich off this book. They do. Because they think that's what it is.
Yeah.
They think it's not going to get you rich, so what do you want?
Yeah. Now, you talked about, you've written 14 books and you talked about writing it in different ways. One, you did a transcript of something that you did. How did you do your last book and what's writing advice for today to create a book?
Oh, my last book was, I'll be honest, it was an experiment in Joe Polish's Genius Network program. And he has a concept called the 10-minute talk. And I give Joe a hard time. I tell Joe that he just has TED envy. Screw you and your TED Talks. We have 10-minute talks. And Joe had this idea of every 10-minute talk would come with a 10-minute book that is your topic more in depth. So it was an experiment about my talk. And the experiment actually died about halfway through it. But I decided to finish it up anyway. And I worked with a ghost but who interviewed me. And in many ways, I maybe could have written it faster. It's
Mm-hmm.
all coming from the show, coming from the notes of my presentation, the slides, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, what's interesting, if you go through that process, what do you want the book to do? The writing process comes second. Because if what I want the book to do is teach people, let's say I do now, my How to Podcast book. I can't remember. We recorded 2 podcast interviews. The other podcast is where? Let the audience know so they can listen if they want more of this.
Oh, yeah. The Elite Expert Insider podcast.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Elite. So we were talking about Descript. We were talking about Descript. I mentioned that book, How to Podcast. Took it off the shelves because ethically, Descript makes it so much easier to podcast that a book about how to podcast that doesn't basically say use Descript is a book that isn't ethical and something I could put my name on. So I talked to them about the possibility of releasing the next version of How to Podcast with the whole thing basically being an instruction manual for Descript. In that case, probably largely ghosted by them because they have their technical people they want to do. So what do you want the book to do? Then how does the writing process go from there? Do you do a ghosting interview kind of situation? Do you work an outline? Do you write it out? Do you dictate it? What do you do? That one that came for the presentation, I took the transcript and then I rewrote it and went from there. Sometimes editing is easier than writing. Sometimes writing is easier than editing. But it goes back from what do you want the podcast to do? What do you want the book to do? What do you want the social video to do? And then once then the tech behind it and the steps behind it, those become obvious.
Yeah. I've been monkeying around with AI a little bit. I just did a presentation about AI personal brand, building your book using different things. And it's just interesting how it's turning that into chapters, but it's still not right. You really need to add more content. You really need to tweak it all out. It's not just I can just turn this into a book, 1, 2, 3. There's work that's involved still.
The best description I've heard of AI from my buddy Kelly. AI is a brilliant graduate student with the emotional IQ of a 6-year-old who wants nothing more than to please you.
Yeah.
So, if you had a brilliant graduate student with the emotional IQ of a 6-year-old, do you want him writing your book? No.
Yeah.
There's a tool called Google Notebook LLM.
Yep.
It's a fascinating tool. One of the things it does is you can give it content and it will give you an output in the form of a podcast.
I've played with that. That's amazing. And the voices are really good too.
The voices are amazing. I gave it my last book, Never Go Shopping When You're Hungry, to see what it would do. And it was very good. It was better than what I think most podcasters would have done with it, to be honest, except it got a major plot point wrong. In the book, I talk about going to dinner with Uncle Jerry, dear Uncle Jerry, and Uncle Jerry got the bottle of wine and he didn't like it and he sent it back. And that freaking blew my mind. It blew my mind that you could send things back, that you could not accept mediocrity, that you could stand up for yourself. It was a major moment of my life. And good old Uncle Jerry. And I talk about that in the book because you don't have to put up with this stuff.
Right.
If your publisher says we can't change categories at Amazon, do you have to put up with that? And so I talk about that in the book. And because the books Never Go Shopping When You're Hungry, so talking about going to dinner with Uncle Jerry, it all fits into the themes. And and by the way, you can go to YouTube. There's I put up the audio, and it's called like AI Reviews Paul's New Book or something like that. And they're talking, and the one person says, "Hey, remember that part in the book where Paul sent back the wine? It totally got it wrong."
Yeah. So you have to listen to the whole thing.
So authoritative. It sounded like the plot point. Not that I have 1,000 people reading these books or anything like that, but I could see somebody say, "Hey, I wanted to read about the part where you sent back the wine, and you didn't send back the wine. Your Uncle Jerry sent back the wine." And that was the important part because it was what I learned from Uncle Jerry.
Now, you can go back in, I think, and maybe give corrections to it?
Possibly. But that initial reaction, that AI is a teammate. AI is a teammate. And one of our rules is AI never lands the plane.
I like that analogy. It never lands the plane. You got to be
AI never lands the plane.
That's a great one. Now, how are you going to use that podcast? Are you going to repurpose it in any way? What are you going to do with it?
No, that one, you mean that I published it. It was interesting. I'm probably going to rewrite. I'm probably going to the 4 questions. What do you want it to do? What's doing it? Is it doing it? How do you do it better? That's like the fundamentals of business. That's an MBA in 4 questions.
Yeah.
And it deserves more attention than the existing kind of 10-minute book approach that I gave to it.
Yeah.
So I'm probably going to rewrite it. And then from there, but the book is an entry point to our consulting. It's the same question we ask all of our clients. Somebody says, I want to get a podcast. What do you want to do? I want to interview people. No, that's what you want it to be. What do you want it to do?
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about, no, that's what it is. What do you want it to do? I want you to make the phone ring. All right, now we're talking. So we got to design a podcast that makes the phone ring. How do you do that? You have an offer on the podcast that they only get if they ring the phone.
Yeah.
And if the book is you want to make the phone ring, you certainly don't. How are they going to do that? They'll look me up online. No, there's a phone number in the book. Maybe mentioned a couple of times. There's a famous book called Love Does by Bob Goff. Yeah. And Bob, at the end of the book, he literally says, hey, if you got any questions, text me. And he gives his phone number at the end of the book. And, what do you want it to do? Yeah, so this particular one, this was a test. This was fun. It's complete. I handed it away. It's a good introduction to who we are, but there's probably a new version coming out soon.
Yeah, that you can go a little deeper. Have you seen that Mike just sent an email out? Mike Koenig sent an email out that a mutual friend of ours that we both known and done things with. But he did all of his books. He turned the audiobooks into podcast episodes.
Yeah, I taught Mike to do that. Yep.
See, you're the one. I knew it. And so we are taking that. We're like, hey, we should do that for our authors. But then some of the authors we got a little pushback like, oh, but then you're going to give it away for free? But then they won't buy my audiobook or my book. Like, why would I give it away for free?
Well, and it goes back to
that question.
What does Mike want? Mike wants people to call.
Yes. So if you want people to call and to connect with you and be part of your audience, then yeah, you want it to be everywhere.
And which goes back to that first question that we asked on the first podcast that we recorded today. Do you want to be everywhere? Yes, you do want to be everywhere.
Yeah. And that also goes to, I see books that are even published by main publishers. I don't know how this is happening, but their audiobooks are up on YouTube. So I don't know if someone's like recording it, like bootlegging it and putting it on YouTube, but I can get audiobooks for free.
Some of the commercials. Brendan Burchard, famous for his figure book Advance, he bought back the audiobook rights for his last book.
Interesting.
He bought them back and he released it as a podcast. And he said it was one of the best things he ever did.
Oh, I'm going to use that in my pitch.
Think about it. He paid money to give away his content for free.
Wow.
Because Brendan knew that the power of the book was in getting people into his world, not the royalty.
That is so powerful right there. That's a great testimony of why you should do it and why you should give it out and put it on every platform. Like you talked earlier in Elite Expert Insider podcast of just giving it away wherever you can.
Yeah. If you wanted to do something, if you want royalties, then it's a different plan.
But the royalties are
terrible.
Yeah.
Lame. Sucky.
Yes, exactly. So what other advice do you have for someone who is thinking about writing a book? We get people who are thinking about it and they're just overwhelmed with the whole process.
It's a lot easier to writing a book is terrifying. Get a coach, maybe some elite expert insiders, but when you ask, what do I want the book to do? That kind of changes the game.
It does.
And and then from that point, maybe the co-author comes into play. Maybe AI writes parts of it if it makes sense to what you're doing. But if you ask that first question, what do I want the book to do?
Yeah.
Life gets a lot easier. Because we have these people always ask, how long should a podcast be? That's like asking how long is a piece of string? What do you want the book to do? And then how do we do that as quickly as possible? That's the situation. And so honestly, in that How to Podcast book, I wanted to teach people how to podcast so that they could hire me to generate revenue from the podcast.
Yeah. And those are such powerful questions. And I'm just realizing we're almost out of time. So I got to wrap this up. So everyone, I want you to make sure you go and grab Paul's newest book. Okay. Never Go Shopping When You're Hungry. It's on Amazon and everywhere books are sold. And check out his other 14 books because they are amazing. He's been a super mentor to me, to my business partner, Jen Foster. I have learned tremendously from Paul and I know you can too. And hey, just by having Paul in my life, it's worth mid-6 figures. I'm just telling you from what I learned from everything that I've got. So there's a testimonial from us for that. And if you're looking to write a book and you want to join it and ask, what is this book going to do for you? We do a VIP book creation day where we ask that question. And during that day, you'll get almost a third of your book written and get those questions answered and who your ideal audience is. And then we'll help you along the way to get it published and be a bestseller.
If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.